Make sure to like and subscribe if you believe respect isn't about rank, it's about resilience, especially for those who wore the uniform in silence long after the cheers faded and the medals collected dust. He walked those marble floors like a shadow, quiet, invisible, forgotten. Every morning before the first trainee even scanned their ID or scrolled their feed, the old man in the dark blue security uniform was already at his post. No flashy badge, no digital nameplate, just time-creased hands, a worn cap with the word retired stitched above an old faded unit patch that no one bothered to ask about. Most didn't even look. At the Bridgemont Tactical Training Center, where the sons and daughters of military legacies came to learn how to be elite excellence, was drilled in, but humility was left at the gate. The recruits were young, sharp, polished. Their boots gleamed like trophies. Their voices carried the overconfidence of those who hadn't yet failed hard. They strutted through the halls like they were already legends destined for command. And him to them, he was just the security guard at the front desk, the one who buzzed people in and nodded without speaking, the one who emptied the ashtrays and checked the cameras no one cared to notice. Some mocked him, not all. But enough. They whispered as they passed, loud enough to be heard. Look at him. Grandpa Gatekeeper. Think he even knows what Bluetooth is? One of them once left an old rotary phone on his desk with a post-it that read emergency hotline. They thought it was hilarious. They thought he was harmless. Because he never snapped back, never even frowned. He just kept standing there, same posture, same silence day after day. And they mistook that silence for surrender. But it wasn't surrender. It was something else. Something they didn't recognize. Not yet. He was all swagger and southern charm, that one Carter second-year trainee, top of his class in hand-to-hand combat and bottom in humility. That morning he strutted through the rec hall with his breakfast tray, laughing loud enough for the walls to hear. And then, as Lang passed by, Carter turned sharply and let the tray drop. Eggs toast and orange juice splattered across the tiles like a field report gone wrong. Oops, he grinned, glancing around with mock surprise. Looks like we got a mess here, soldier. The way he said soldier, stretched it, laced it with sarcasm, made a few nearby trainees snicker. A banana peel was added for flair. Crumpled napkins soon followed. One even poured out half a protein shake like they were feeding the humiliation. Lang didn't flinch. He looked at the mess, then at the boys, no children in grown-up uniforms, and nodded once. Slowly, silently. Then he bent down and began cleaning. No words, no expression. Just deliberate, steady movement like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Because he had. Just not here. To them, he was background noise. A man with a flashlight in a building full of flashier egos. But what stunned the most, what no one admitted, was how easy it was to forget. To forget a man. A life. A legacy. Once the parades end, once the medals are boxed and the salutes stop echoing, no one ever asked why he walked with a limp, or why he sometimes paused at the wall of honor, staring at one faded black and white photo a little longer than necessary, a lone officer saluting in a sandstorm wind howling around him like a ghost. Lang would stop, steady his breath, then walk on. That week, the mockery escalated like a bad drill gone unchecked. One night, someone slid a printout under his desk blotter, an online joke application for senior tactical door operator. Under skills, someone had scribbled in Sharpie key, jiggling coffee thermos defense advanced gatekeeping. Lang unfolded it, read it, folded it again, and slipped it into his jacket pocket. No reaction, no shame, just that same stillness. Because they didn't know. They didn't know what Lang had done before the gates. Didn't know the weight he carried in his quiet. Didn't know that long before they were born, he had already written chapters in history that would never be taught in their classrooms. While they slept, he remembered. He remembered call signs that never answered. He remembered the grit of sand in his teeth and the way silence felt louder than explosions when the mission was over. He remembered not just orders, but honor. Bridgemont prided itself on discipline and tradition, but in its chase for perfection it had lost humility. And no one, not even the instructors, thought to remind them. Not yet. But they were about to learn something. Real rank. It isn't stitched on fabric, it's stitched into scars. And sometimes the man standing in the back, the one they never looked at, has lived a louder life than any of them could ever imagine. He was a name spoken with gravity, Colonel Marshall Denning, the kind of man whose biography gets studied in war colleges, whose campaigns stretched across continents, and whose protégés now held titles, medals, and scars. The trainees had been buzzing for days. Now, as the hour approached, nerves were drawn tight like rifle wire. Uniforms were straightened again and again. Shoes gleamed like obsidian. The grand auditorium of Bridgemont pulsed with anticipation, its polished floors and steel blue banners gleaming under perfect light. No detail left unchecked. Not with Denning coming. Not with him. Outside, just minutes before the event, Lang moved through the east corridor. Same blue uniform, same deliberate steps, only slower this morning. At the end of the hall, he paused, one hand adjusting the brim of his faded cap, eyes locked on the entryway where staff scrambled and voices echoed. His fingers brushed the laminated ID at his belt. Not out of habit, out of memory. He stood still, a man out of place, yet completely at ease, like a ghost who had returned not to haunt, but to witness. And then, inside, the hush fell. The auditorium doors swung wide, and in walked Colonel Denning. You couldn't ignore him. Tall, broad, composed like a storm that didn't need thunder to be feared. The salutes snapped into place like dominoes. Cameras clicked, posture stiffened. He nodded once, grim, unreadable. But then he didn't walk to the podium. He kept moving, past the brass, past the cadets, past the silence, straight toward the corridor. Eyes followed. Voices fell quiet. Even the instructors, the ones who never flinched, turned their heads. At the end of the hallway stood Lang, still, steady, watching. And Denning, the man known for never breaking formation, stopped, right before him. And then he saluted. A full, formal regulation salute. Not performative, not symbolic. Real. You could hear someone gasp in the third row. Someone else dropped their pen. Then Denning spoke. Not loud, not theatrical, just enough for those nearby, which in a room like this meant everyone heard. Sir, it's an honor to finally meet you in person. Silence detonated across the room. Sir! He called him sir. The cadets blinked. One of them, Carter, stiffened so hard his chair squeaked. Sir, the security guy, and Lang. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. He returned the salute, smooth, exact, the kind of salute you only master when you've done it under fire, when hesitation could kill. And that was when Denning turned to face the crowd. He cleared his throat once. Before I begin my address, I need to recognize someone among us. A man who shaped more warriors than I ever could. A man who saved my life and the lives of 212 others during Operation Harrogate. The back rows erupted in whispers. Operation Harrogate. That mission was barely declassified. Half the trainees thought it was a myth, and Denning didn't flinch. You know him as the guard at the East Gate, the one who nods and disappears. I know him as Captain Joseph Lang, tactician, commander, ghost of war. The reason I'm standing here today. That operation was supposed to be sealed, still barely declassified. Gasps flickered like sparks across the auditorium. The name Captain Joseph Lang rippled through the ranks like a shockwave. Some cadets looked confused. Others looked shattered. But one stood paralyzed, Carter, the same cocky recruit who had dropped the tray. His face now drained of color, fists clenched at his sides. Lang. That name wasn't just familiar. It was legend. It had been whispered in classified briefings, buried in files with more redactions than sentences. Some had called him a myth, a ghost commander who led men where maps didn't exist and brought them home when no one else could. And now that name was the old man at the East Gate. Colonel Denning turned back toward Lang not as a superior, but as a soldier. "Sir, I've waited years for this moment. You saved us. You stayed behind when others ran. You gave more than any medal could repay. And now, these cadets, our future, they need to know who you really are." Lang didn't swell with pride. He didn't blink for the cameras. He simply nodded a small, tired motion like a man who always knew this moment would come, not because he wanted it, but because truth always surfaces. The silence was crushing. Some cadets were still frozen upright. Others sat down stunned. A few looked around in horror, counting back all the times they'd laughed at him, ignored him, left him in the corner of their world, like furniture that didn't matter. And then Denning did something more unexpected than his salute. "Sir, would you say a few words?" Lang hesitated. His eyes drifted over the room. He looked at the cadets, the loud ones, the quiet ones, the indifferent ones. He looked at the instructors, the ones who had let the disrespect happen. And then his gaze settled on the walls, the ones filled with portraits, heroes in frames, none of which bore his name. Finally he spoke. "I'll speak. Not for me, but for the ones who never made it home." The room, once full of swagger and jokes, went dead silent. Lang stepped forward, not toward the stage, but just far enough for everyone to see him. "I've seen young men crumble under pressure. I've seen leaders fall not because they were weak, but because they had no humility. I came back home not with pride in my chest, but with ghosts in my heart." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pace the stage. He just stood there, still solid, telling the kind of truth no textbook could teach. "I didn't come here to be honored. I came here to stay close to what I loved, even if the world forgot me, even if you did." He spoke of missions no one would ever read about, of men whose names would never appear on plaques, of the kind of leadership that doesn't end when the bullets stop, but echoes in every silent step that follows. By the end, you could hear cadets breathing. Some wiped their eyes. Others couldn't meet his gaze. Even the instructors, the ones who should have known better, shifted in their seats like the weight of their own silence had suddenly become too heavy. Lang stopped. No applause. No speech tag. Just silence. But then something happened. Carter stood up, his jaw clenched, eyes red. He walked stiff and slow until he stood face to face with Lang. "Sir, I'm sorry. I didn't know. But that's no excuse." Lang gave a slight nod. No words, just enough. And then another cadet stood, then another, and another, until the entire room, every future leader in that building, rose to their feet. They didn't clap. They didn't cheer. They saluted, one by one, in total silence. To the man they once overlooked, Colonel Denning didn't interrupt. He just stepped aside, and in that moment, Captain Joseph Lang, once invisible, was seen. He turned without fanfare, walked slowly back toward the east hallway. Same steps, same gait, same cap. Only this time, every step echoed louder than 1,000 speeches. They didn't clap. They didn't cheer. They saluted, one by one, in total, unwavering silence. 200 future protectors stood at attention, not for protocol, not because they were told to, but because suddenly not doing so would have felt like disrespecting something sacred. Colonel Denning didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply stepped aside as if even his rank knew when to get out of the way. And in that moment, Captain Joseph Lang, quiet, overlooked, and invisible for so long, wasn't just respected. He was remembered. Lang didn't linger. He didn't bow, didn't nod to the applause that never came, because he didn't need it. He turned. Same calm pace, same steady breath, and walked slowly back down the corridor past the wall of forgotten names, past the guards who now stood a little taller and disappeared around the corner, like he'd never been there at all. But they knew. Now, they knew. Because respect isn't a title, it's not a uniform, it's not even a war story. It's how you carry yourself when no one's watching, and how you treat those who carry the weight of sacrifice in silence. If you believe no hero should ever be forgotten, not the loud ones, but especially the quiet ones, then share this story, so the world never again overlooks the Langs still walking among us. Respect isn't in uniforms or titles. It's in how you carry the weight of what you survived when no one else even knew you were carrying it. If you believe the quietest people often have the loudest stories, share this, so we never again forget the ones who never asked to be remembered.